One of the areas of our law that has always intrigued me is motoring offences and their purpose. For me, their purpose mainly seems to collect revenue for local councils or for government. It is not what I've always thought is about protecting other people, motorists, etc., from harm. And I was always very interested to notice that if you pay immediately, there is one charge. Then if you don't pay within a certain time, the charge then may be doubled. And then if you go to court to protest your innocence of that and you're found guilty, the fine goes up even more. So it seems that it's a form of tax and not to benefit the community as a whole. So if we start off with parking, with all the yellow lines, red lines and single yellow lines and parking restrictions, it seems to me that there's no sense to them, because many a time the roads are free and it would seem quite sensible that one could park there without holding up traffic or creating a blockage. And therefore, why can't people be left for themselves to make a judgment about whether they are blocking anyone in the way they're parking? And if people do block and they infringe the passing by of other traffic, then remove them and certainly fine them. But if we allow people to take on responsibility for their own parking and see it as a way of creating free flow traffic, then that's what we should do. But of course, I firmly believe that underpinning all motoring offences is the revenue that it generates. The other comes to speeding. We have a blanket control over roads, so we say 20 miles here, 30 miles there, 40 miles there, 50, 70, whatever. And what we don't teach people, certainly in speeding, to be aware of their surroundings and drive according to the conditions. Now sometimes you're in an area where there's school or children playing around where you wouldn't go more than 15 miles an hour, because you never know whether a youngster is going to run out in the road or whatever hazard might suddenly come across you with pedestrians. And other times it's free and there's no reason why you can't do 30, 35. And each situation is different. And with the way that the modern car is built, and certainly with the braking system, we can now stop in much shorter distances and it's much safer. And if we don't want people to drive within our cities, which I think is quite sensible, then we must find alternative transport to allow it to move people around within towns and cities. And therefore that should be the focus if we believe in safety. And with on motorways, we have speed restrictions. And again, we don't allow people to look at the situation, the conditions of the road and at what speed, because if it's pouring with rain or it's icy or whatever, speed should reduce. But we should teach people to be responsible on the roads, not impose financial penalties on people, because that really goes against safety, because people then begin to see it's a game that they can outwit the law, which it's not a game. It's about keeping not only yourself safe but other people safe, and we seem to have moved well away from that. Cars are fantastic, but they can also be used as lethal weapons, and we need to train young people to drive properly. what we seem to do is to have a system in which we teach people to the mechanical skills and the law of the roads, but we don't give them a sense of driving, a sense of the power of the vehicle that they are in. And one of the things that I think is very important is that we have tracks where youngsters can learn to drive fast. They can learn skills of handling very powerful vehicles. And they can see, experience what it's like, because I think once you experience something and you know what the potential is, then the mystique and somewhat of the joy goes out of that situation. So the other thing is that we should encourage youngsters, first of all, to ride bicycles. And this may seem strange, but to me, if you've never been on a bike and you go straight into a car, you have never understood the idea of the dangers of the road. Because driving a bike is a totally different experience and a vulnerable experience for the person than just getting in a car, having no knowledge of the outside world, because you're in a boxed cocoon and it's a totally different environment. Secondly, having driven a motorcycle since I was 16 and right up until I'm in my 60s, I was always being aware of when drivers were going to do something silly like pull out on me, just ridiculous. And these were people who had no sense of the road and no sense of bikes or anybody else on the road. And I used to say to them, remonstrate and say, look, I have one life, and if you'd hit me, I would have been dead. So you had to drive being responsible. And then I wouldn't allow anyone to have a car unless they bought it themselves. I think the idea that a youngster saving up for their own car and them realising the worth of their car, and that just to be given a car or finding it easy to get an HP a car, I think this is on hire purchase is not conducive to good driving, because there's no value in it, because it's just easy, and we make life much too easy, and driving shouldn't be easy. You know, if you are in control of this huge, powerful piece of motorised weaponry, then you need to understand how lethal it can be and how damaging it can be to other people. The other thing, I think, when people have been finding they can take an alternative test rather than getting points on their licence, I think this should be available to everybody. I think they are excellent. They're manned by very competent, incredibly knowledgeable people, and with some really good films. And I think everybody needs to know and learn about what it is, what they have in control. And before going on a motorway, youngsters need to understand not only how to exit and enter on a motorway, but the motorway laws, how it works, and what they should be looking for, and not just passing your test and being allowed to suddenly go from driving at 35 miles an hour and suddenly be allowed to go, 80 miles, 70 or 80 miles an hour or more when they get on the motorway. And then we need to consider why are we travelling, and the amount of pollution we cause. And that isn't taken into account. We are so interested in raising revenue, and where that revenue goes is not back into protecting motorists and pedestrians. It gets fired off into other coffers, other departments. And if we were really concerned, any money that revenue we raise would go back into make our roads safer. And we need to understand, and I think, that there are different conditions at different types of the day. At 3 o'clock in the morning, AM, when no one's around is totally different to, say, 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon, when in this very same area kids are coming out of school, and therefore we have to treat the circumstances differently. And I would like to have a society where we become knowledgeable, and I would like to think that, you know, there's 2 years probation for drivers to learn how to drive, to learn driving experience, a sense of the road. Because just allowing people onto the roads and then penalising them when they transgress the law is, to me, hardly acceptable.